It's conspiracy time. Also, I just brushed my teeth, so that was absolutely disgusting, but also intriguing in its disgustingness. Is that weird? Is that a weird thing to feel? Anyway, hi, hello, I'm the Pterodactyl. I've been playing Genshin Impact since it came out, and it has driven me only mildly insane. I've been playing Genshin Impact since it first released, and I have been maining this girl right here, Fischl, since, I don't know, probably about like day 2 of playing. I don't know, whenever I first got her as a character to be able to play as. She has been my main. And being the person that I am, I noticed some weird things going on with my girl Fischl here. And I also noticed some weird things about Fischl. Did I just say the same thing twice? No! It meant 2 different things. If you don't understand, allow me to explain, and allow me to convince you of my theory. And me answering the question of who is Fischl. But not Fischl, but Fischl. So to start, the character we play as in Genshin Impact, that being Fischl, her name is not actually Fischl. Her name is Amy. Amy was a very lonely child, and her parents were adventurers, so they weren't home a lot. And so she would seek comfort in books, specifically her favorite book series, that being Flowers for Princess Fischl. Amy got attached to the main character Fischl and started pretending to be Fischl. And you know, it's cute when you're a child. But then she would grow up and then her peers would start mocking her because she refused to give up the persona of Fischl. On Amy's 14th birthday, her parents were like, Amy, sweetie, you gotta stop. You're getting too old for pretending to be Fischl all the time. To which Amy doubled down! She doubled down so hard that she was recognized by the gods and given power over the electro element, to which her subconscious then created Oz, that being the companion of Fischl, in Amy's real life. And then from then on, nobody questioned Amy again. They were just like, yeah, no, we call her Fischl. It's who she wants to be. Let her do her thing. And she is now a successful member of the Adventurers Guild in her home city of Mondstadt. I will be calling playable character Fischl Amy from here on out, just to keep things 100% clear. Otherwise, we will get confused between the two Fischls. What my question is who is Fischl, the protagonist of Flowers for Princess Fischl? Who is she? And why is she important? Answer: because she inspired Amy. Just kidding, there's more. There's always more. So before we can go into the weirdness of Fischl, we first have to go into the small bit of weirdness that is Amy. Because Amy has been around since version 1.0 of Genshin Impact. She's been there since the launch date, right? Great. Amy is the only character of the 21 characters that have been there since launch to not have a permanent story quest of any kind. Side note, I was coming up with this idea before the event Paralogism came out and is a permanent quest, and that shows everyone in Mondstadt. So this was before that happened. But also, Amy's in like, what, a minute, maybe, of that? And unfortunately, because I played it as it released, she was unvoiced. And also, all of Mondstadt was there, and Amy's section, you could have accidentally skipped. I am thorough, though, so I did not skip my girl. But still, you could have skipped it on accident and not seen her. She's not a big player in the quest. So I stand by my point. She is in no playable permanent quests in Genshin Impact. And yes, I did make sure that the other 20 characters do have quests that are permanent in the game. 10 of them have their very own quests. 11 of them take part in the main quest. 3 of them appear in other main quests, other people's quests. And 7 of them, all of which are 4-star characters like Amy, have their own special hangout events with you, the Traveler. So there's no reason for this. Amy should, at the very least, have a hangout event with you, the Traveler, but she doesn't. She is the only one of the 21 original characters to not have a permanent quest line. Now, you may have noticed that I kept on saying permanent because Amy has been in quests in Genshin Impact. However, all of the quests that she's been in are very unfortunately limited time events. And if you didn't get to experience them, they're gone forever. You have to go on YouTube and watch somebody else play it who had the foresight to record it as they were playing it, right? It's unfortunate. And I hate that in a game. Amy has been a part of 2 of these limited time events. The first being the very first limited time event, that being in version 1.1, that being the Unreconciled Stars event. Very important. And the second one was in version 2.8, and that was the Summertime Odyssey, an event which actually focused on Amy, which was really fun and nice for me specifically. And it also gave us this great skin, this alternate outfit that I used to demonstrate Fischl. And you want to know the fun thing about those 2 quests that Amy has been a part of? Unreconciled Stars, super important to the lore. It's when we got to meet our third of the 11 Fatui Harbingers, that being Scaramouche, who is very lore important going forward. And it is also when we got the lore bomb that was the sky is fake and the stars aren't real. A thing that when it was said by Scaramouche, I laughed at. What are you talking about? The sky is fake. But no, it's true. It's true. We have seen the sky crack. It's fake, and we learned that in version 1.1, the version where Fischl was one of the 2 characters that were, like, main and important in it. Her and Mona. Very big lore drop there. And then you can argue that the Summertime Odyssey event was less important, seeing as it was just the second of the summertime events that happen that take you to a magical world kind of a thing. Except, at the end of the Summertime Odyssey event, that is the first time we got to hear the voice of Nahida, the next Archon that would meet, the Archon of Sumeru and Wisdom and Dendro. We got to hear her voice for the first time at the end of that quest line, so that was cool. And that means that Summertime Odyssey is important, meaning that the 2 quest lines that Amy has been a part of have both been important. You can fight me on this. But that's all the weirdness that's going on with Amy. We can put Amy to the side for now. Now, let's look at the weirdness going on with her namesake, Fischl. So, in Genshin Impact, there are books that you can collect, and you can read these books, or more accurately, excerpts from these books. And some of these books are in-universe historical. Some of them are in-universe fictional. Others are really, really hard to tell. I've lost so much time trying to figure out some of these. Anyway, Flowers for Princess Fischl is fiction. We are told that it is fiction. It is a fictional book series. And yeah, it's a series of books. It is also, questionably, a sequel to the book series Legend of the Shattered Halberd. They're written by the same guy, and I think they're implying that they take place in the same universe. That's the implication there. Same world type of a thing going on there. So before I can jump into the plotline of Flowers for Princess Fischl, I first have to talk about Legend of the Shattered Halberd, which sucks. Reading this book sucked. Because remember how I said it's usually like excerpts from the books, and so like as you're collecting the volumes, that being like each of the individual books, you'll get an excerpt for that specific volume. But here's something really annoying that Legend of the Shattered Halberd does. It has this like summary, and then you go into the excerpt, right? And I can't tell if that summary is summarizing the events that have happened up until the excerpt, or if it's a summary of the excerpt. It's kind of hard to tell, And sometimes I think it switches between which of those it is. But for my own sanity, none of this matters. What matters is I wrote down the important world-building notes that we got from Legend of the Shattered Halberd. Number 1, there are 9 worlds. There are 9 realms that are connected through something called the Axis Mundi. And if you're like me and you're like, where do I know Axis Mundi from? Norse mythology. The answer is Norse mythology. I had to look that up, and then I smacked myself because I was like, the Doi! Of course, something related to Fischl, who is in herself somewhat of like an Odin figure, which I'll get to later. Of course, the book series that's tied to her book series is related to Norse mythology. The Axis Mundi is like the tree Irminsul that connects, or Irmin, I can't remember off the top of my head, connects the 9 realms of Norse mythology together. That's what it is. Number 2, the God King of the world created many divine halberds. The first one being the divine halberd named Irmin. And Irmin pierced through the Axis Mundi, allowing for travel between the 9 worlds. Important thing number 3. There was a war between the gods. This war would shatter Irmin, and the God King, quote, fell. Does that mean he died? I don't know. Maybe, but he also could have gone into a sleep thing. The best way that I can compare this is, and I'm sorry, this is another fictional reference, is the Emperor in Warhammer 40k, where he is technically dead, but as he's sitting on his throne and being essentially fed souls, he's also alive at the same time. I think that's what happened to the God King in Legend of the Shattered Halberds. But, important thing number 4, because the God King fell, all of the worlds set aflame, and all life was wiped out, and then the universe started over, with new beings. And this time, because Irmin, the divine halberd that had pierced the Axis Mundi, was shattered, this time all of the realms were closed off from one another. Thing number 5, the last of the divine halberds that was made by the God King was made to kill him, but it's implied that he made it after the events of Legend of the Shattered Halberd. It's confusing. But this last divine halberd was made to kill the God King, and it was called the Prinzessin der Verurteilung. Now, if you know anything about my girl Amy or Fischl, that stands out to you. Because Amy's line is, for I, Fischl, the Prinzessin der Verurteilung. So yeah, that's what Amy has the title of Fischl as. That's her royal title. Meaning that Fischl is that last divine halberd made to kill the God King. That's all we need to learn from Legend of the Shattered Halberd. We can forget about it now, because this was a nightmare to read. Just kidding, it's gonna come back later. I really don't like this book. Now we can move on from the bad book to the better one. Flowers for Princess Fischl. Are you ready? So, fun fact. We could not collect Flowers for Princess Fischl until version 2.1. Such a long time! We've known of Fischl and the book Flowers for Princess Fischl since version 1.0. We had to wait a whole other version 2.0, and then another month or so. Maybe 2 months. I don't know how often the point number patches happened. Just so you know, we got all of it. We got the first bit of Inazuma, and then some, by the time that we were able to acquire Flowers for Princess Fischl. So, are you ready? Are you ready to learn about Flowers for Princess Fischl? Pretend this is Flowers for Princess Fischl. Instead, this is Phasmagoria, which is funny because Midnight Phantasmagoria is the name of her ultimate attack. Anyway, we open up Flowers for Princess Fischl and... disappointment! Disappointment is what happens. Because what we can collect of Flowers for Princess Fischl isn't any of the volumes. No. What we get is volume 0. And that sounds, fun. That connects it to Legend of the Shattered Halberd. But no, it's the only thing we can collect. And it's next to none of the plot. And instead, it is essentially author's notes from the author Mr. Nine, as well as a short Q&A with the author Mr. Nine. And want to know what the last question that's asked in there is? Is he balding? It's a joke. The volume 0 of Flowers for Princess Fischl is a joke. That said, I am nothing if not inconsistently thorough. So I did write down any notes that I could from the Flowers for Princess Fischl volume 0, and I will now tell you about it. Number 1, Osvaldo Hrafnivens. That is Oz's full name, and we did already know that thanks to my girl, Amy. She already told us that. Thank you. What we do get to learn is that he is the Lord of the Notchbryn, which I'm pretty sure Notchbryn is Raven. He has a power level of 10, which is something that the author Mr. Nine is telling us as we go along what the power level of each of these creatures is, which is nice, ? We also know that Oz's power level is 10 because of when he defeated the Damarung, as depicted here for reasons. We'll get to it. And the Damarung is actually, fun fact, the natural nemesis of the Notchbryn. Alright, thing number 2 we learned from Flowers for Princess Fischl is the beast of the world, Gazamat Kunzverk. It's this guy who, so yeah, for things that I didn't have a picture of, you're left with 1, my best interpretation in terms of pictures, that being these 3, and 2, my drawings. I hope you enjoy. So, Gazamat Kunzverk is the beast that must be defeated by Fischl, I mean the Immunakreich. The Immunakreich is Fischl's domain. It is the kingdom that she is set to inherit at the end of her journey. So, my interpretation is that in order to get there, Fischl has to first beat Gazamat Kunzverk in order to get to her kingdom. It has a power level of, I think, 20, but it could have been 30, and I can't remember off the top of my head. And my notes are, unfortunately, kind of scribbled on. The important thing that I pulled from this is this one quote, that once it, quote, takes the stage in the opera theater of the apocalypse, end quote, then more beasts of the world will start popping up and causing chaos. So presumably by the start of the events of Flowers for Princess Fischl, Gazamat Kunzverk has in fact taken that stage of the opera of the apocalypse, and thus more beasts of the world have popped up, and you will see Fischl fighting them. I think that's the overall, plot structure of Flowers for Princess Fischl. It's hard to tell. Number 3! There are 2 characters that exist in the series that their job is to, quote, give praise to Fischl. Presumably, this is kind of like in Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, where you have the 2 sages of Earth and Wind, I believe, who are constantly singing praise to the Master Sword to empower it. I think that's what these 2 figures are like. They are singing praise to Fischl, and that empowers her more. These 2 beings are Zarathustra and somebody called the Musician. I'll get to both of them. But what you need to know about these 2 is that one of them, quote, one of them proclaims the agony of Fischl's heart, while the other one proclaims the grandeur of her travails. So one of them, like I said, was Zarathustra. This is thing number 4. Zarathustra is a philosopher, and he was chosen for something. What we know about this something is that had he not been chosen, then the, quote, opera writer would have won the contest for the will of the world, and from what we can tell, that would have been bad. So it's a good thing that Zarathustra was chosen, and this was coincidental to him also being the one to give praise to Fischl. So it's weird. And then the other one, the musician, we know nothing about. Which brings me to thing number 5. The Saint of Seven Tears is the Saint of Seven Tears is the weakness of Gesamtkunstwerk. So she is the weakness to it. And the way that things are layered, it gives the impression that the Saint of Seven Tears is also the musician. Like the way that you read it, you're like, oh, Saint of Seven Tears, clearly the musician, right? But then you think about it and it's like, but maybe there could be another character. And then you also think about it and the Saint of Seven Tears being the weakness to this guy. It's like, is that Fischl? Is this Fischl? So we don't know who the Saint of Seven Tears is, but I have 3 answers. 1, it's Fischl. 2, it's the musician. 3, it's a completely separate character whose name is the Saint of Seven Tears. Thing number 6. People with high magical skill essentially create their own unique domains, and these domains reflect the person's emotions and souls. Fischl has one of these, though it's implied that it's not the same thing, but similar. But we're just going to go with it's the same thing. And hers is the Sommernachtgarten, or Summerland, it's also called. Thing number 7. Fischl's mother, the Kaiserin of the Nod-Krai, from what I can tell, a minor character, and she is a shade or a ghost, and by the end of the story, she fades away. But not before, starting to give a message to Fischl, a message that is, kind of split apart between books, from what I can tell, and that isn't always connected together by the readers, so the author, Mr. Nine, thought it was important to give it to us directly. This, quote being, "Find meaning somewhere. The night deepens, but the dream lives on." So, that gives, and, then the author, Mr. Nine, is like, so yeah, have hope, readers. That's, kind of what the message there is. Thing number 8. The author, Mr. Nine, was greatly dissatisfied by the ending of Legend of the Shattered Halberd. He thought that because he had a male main character and then a female side character, that he had to do a romance, and then that romance kind of ruined the story. But not in terms of the actual writing itself, in terms of because the romance existed, it made the narrative and how the story ended bad. The events that took place were worse because of the romance, kind of a thing. If there hadn't been a romance, then there could have been a happier ending. But because there was a romance, it went down the dark path that it did, which is weird for the writer of the book to say. I'll get back to that later. And so because he was dissatisfied, he wanted to think of a new story, one where the main character was the female, and there wasn't this, forced need for romance kind of a thing. And that is how we got Flowers for Princess Fischl. Yeah, that's it for the volume 0 of Flowers for Princess Fischl. And, yeah, that's kind of it. That's a lie, because there's more. You see, there's other places we can look to learn more about Fischl and her story. Those places being 1, the voice lines and character story of Amy. 2, the description for this alternate outfit for Amy. And 3, the weapon that was made for Amy, that being Mitternacht Waltz. So I'm going to go into each of those and kind of just tell you what the vibe is and what we can learn from these about the actual story of Princess Fischl. To start, Amy's voice lines don't give us too much. It's mostly Amy pretending to be Fischl and justifying some of the things that are with her, such as her vision. That's the thing that gives her the power over the element of Electro. She justifies that as that being her Edelstein der Dunkelheit, which is something that Fischl has in the book apparently, which is the Gem of Darkness, which is a family heirloom. And that's why she has it here. That's what gives her power, kind of a thing. And it's a lot of that. It's a lot of Amy justifying herself as Fischl, kind of a thing. It also gives us the general tone of what the wording is in the book Flowers for Princess Fischl. It's overly verbose, and yeah. There's a reason why there are so little fan fictions about Fischl, and every single one of them just about has the tag, Fischl is hard to write. Now, the important things that we can get from Amy are from her character stories. So as you increase friendship with Amy, you get different stories. This is true with all of the characters. Specifically, we need her character story number 3 and her special story. So for reference, each character has 5 character stories, a special story, and then a story about how they got their power. So we're looking at number 3 and the special one. So story number 3 is a story, it talks about how Fischl and Oz met in the story, right? This also gives us the name of the first volume of Flowers for Princess Fischl, that being Flowers for Princess Fischl, Volume 1, End Time Zersetzung. And in this story, Fischl is traveling alone at the time, and she ends up in the Kingdom of Eternal Twilight, which, for reasons, we're just going to point to Damarung. Anyway, she gets there, and she finds that all of the nobility have, they are trying to reject fate itself, and from what we can tell from Amy, Fischl is the bringer of fate, essentially, and the judger of sinners, kind of a thing. So Fischl arrives, and all of the nobles are they're trying their best to deny fate, and in doing so, they've denied everything, including their own humanity, and everyone in this world of Eternal Twilight has kind of turned into beasts. And so they attack Fischl, and Fischl's not having a good time, until her blood spills on the ancient emblem, that presumably being her Edelstein der Dunkelheit, and because of her blood spilling on it, the Night Raven Oz is able to track her down, come in, save the day, and presumably this is when he destroys the Namarung. And from then on, he promises his eternal loyalty to Fischl, the sovereign of the Nod-Krai. And together they'll go on to many other worlds. And then in the special story from Amy, there's a lot. The special story gives us the greater overview of the series of Flowers for Princess Fischl, with the whole series being summarized as every good, quote, every good, bright, and noble thing must eventually fall to inexorable entropic destruction, and the final destination of the universe is the realm in waiting of the Prinzessin, im Nod-Krai. So that's the idea of the story. Eventually, everything is going to decay and fall into ruin, and eventually it will go into Fischl's realm, that being the Nod-Krai, which translated is the Eternal Night Kingdom. We also learn here that Fischl and Oz are the world beasts, different from the beasts of the world. They are the world beasts who will swallow all dreams. And then Fischl, at the very end of everything, she'll gather all of the souls, she'll grant them her benediction, so removing sin from them essentially, and then she'll cleanse the world itself of all sin, and then at the end she'll set her own heart ablaze and create a new universe. The implication there is that Fischl probably has to die to create this new universe, so she's sacrificing herself. And as my mumsy pointed out as I was rambling all of this at her while trying to get all of this straight in my head, very Christian undertones here, which is interesting, and we'll get to later, once I go over some definitions of things. And don't worry, I made it fun! Alright. And the last thing we learn is that before Fischl can do all of this, set her own heart ablaze, gather all the souls, clean the world of sin, and then set her own heart ablaze, she first has to travel through the universe and learn as much as she can and witness all of the stories she can. That way she can learn the lesson that every moment is a treasure. And another quote is, "The Prinzessin's very own phantasmagoria is made out of ones such as these being the happy moments in life." So yeah, that's what we get from Amy. Thank you so much, girl. You're doing great. Now we can move on to the alternate outfit for Amy. This outfit being called Ein Imenastrum. And so this is Fischl's ceremonial outfit. And we have to immediately pause, because this outfit, I cannot tell if it's talking about Amy or Fischl. For reference, this outfit was something you could earn during the limited time event Summertime Odyssey, that being the second of Amy's 2 quests. Now, to shorten it, during the Summertime Odyssey event, you went between these islands, and each of them was representative of a different one of your travel companions that went to these islands with you. The first being Kazuha, or Kadahara Kazuha. The second being Shinyan. The fourth was Amy's, and the last one was Mona Magistus. So that's what's happening. Each realm represents each of them. And so when Fischl gets there, she's like, oh, I have to defeat my nemesis, the Tazrak. We'll get to this. So Amy's goal is to beat the Tazrak, right? And then when you get to her island, you go through a bunch of things. You get there, it has destroyed her kingdom. You're putting it back together as you try to get to where it is. And then you learn the big reveal. The Tazrak is Amy. It is a version of Amy that represents all of her negative aspects, and it is embodied by the Ein Imenastrum outfit on Amy. And because this version has more claim to being Fischl than Amy does, it even gets Oz on its side. And so Amy is just grief-stricken because she had her whole own identity stolen by herself, but her darker side of herself, the emotions that she doesn't want to confront, the things that people will point at and call her weird for that she ignores usually. And so you, the traveler, and our 3 friends, Kazuha, Shinyan, and Mona, all kind of form a physical barrier, and they defend Amy from the Tazrak. And in the end, Amy gets back up, and she confronts the Tazrak. She confronts herself. And she goes, I know that I am weird, but guess what? The things that weird also are the things that make me great. And she embraces her darker self and becomes whole. And that's how that story ends. She embraces herself. The description for Ein Imenastrum, the outfit description, it's written as if it were a play. It says, curtains raise, scene go, kind of a thing. And this is something we saw a lot during Amy's portion of the islands in Summertime Odyssey. It was a lot of these little raven statues were putting on plays. So that immediately puts me in the mind of, okay, this is a story about Amy. And then it continues that with saying that Fischl was getting ready to fight her nemesis, the Tazrak. And with her, she was taking her many knights with her. But the 3 of note were the Knight of Valor, the Knight of Sincerity, and the Knight of Charity. And when you track each of those to one of the characters that's with you, not including you, the traveler, this is definitely a story about Amy on her journey in that island specifically. You've got the Knight of Valor with a sword and a keenness unmatched. That's Kazuha, who is a sword user who has the whispering of the wind in his ear. Then you have the Knight of Sincerity with armor true, who is Xinyan, who creates an actual barrier with her music and her firepower, and she's also just unabashedly herself. The Knight of Charity is a little bit weirder, but I would map it onto Mona, because Mona needs money, she is poor. I'm kidding. I know that we got revealed in this event that she's actually rich and is choosing this as a lifestyle. I feel lied to. Anyway, but Mona, just like the Knight of Charity, she does not fear the truth of the world, kind of a thing. And so you can see that as, and then it says that with those 3 knights, Fischl took on the Tazrak, and while it changed her eye color, This is noted because in the book series, apparently, Fischl is described with a red eye. However, Amy has green eyes. So it's an explanation for that eye color change, but then she'll eventually defeat the Tesseract, is the implication there at the end. So this is a story about Amy, right? This should have gone under Amy. But you have to remember, everything about Amy is filtered through the lens of her playing as Fischl. So I think that the Ein Nostrum is telling the story of Amy, but drawing from elements of Fischl. So I specifically believe that Fischl had to fight a beast of the world known as the Tesseract. I also believe that Fischl had to embody valor, sincerity, and charity in order to defeat the Tesseract. So I think those are all parts that did come from the original Flowers for Princess Fischl story. And then, I also believe that the Tesseract, as I said, is a beast of the world that Fischl had to fight. And I think its description is correct. It's described as, quote, "Black-hearted Tesseract has ripped and devoured the all-protecting night sky and set up its lair." If you were thinking about the all-devouring space narwhal, so was I when I reread it. But we'll get there. We will get there. Because the all-devouring space narwhal haunts my every waking moment. So I believe it was the beast of the world that Fischl had to fight. It is described as her nemesis here. I don't know if we can call it that. I think it's just one of the beasts of the world she did have to fight. Now the last thing, the last bit of information that we can get about Flowers for Princess Fischl is from the weapon Mitternachtswaltz. And this thing is long, because this is an excerpt from the last chapter of the last volume of Flowers for Princess Fischl. And it's really, really important. Now, the intro part I find less important. It's talking about how at the end of Fischl's journey, none of the tears she had cried had been in vain. Saint of 7 tears. That's proof, but maybe not. Oh well. None of the tears she had cried had been in vain, as Fischl and Oz had traversed the many worlds and universe, and witnessed countless stories and their endings. And then it gives us some of the stories that Fischl and Oz witnessed. And I'm just going to quote this whole thing. "Every young man's rage at injustice must turn to calm. Every passion must be ground into dust by the march of time, before being turned to wild paranoia upon that inverted ancient tree. Even the branch of the tree of time upon which the great and glorious Riemann Republic nested would be cut off in the end, such that the nation founded by the other twin child of the wolves might rule. Everything in this world must pass through the doorway of their destruction unto the future kingdom of the Prinzessin. In the silence of her pitch-dark notched garden would they find a place to slumber. Who among those," and then there's a little bit of a break there, but "who among those born into this world are not burdened with sin? When the clock sounds for the time of judgment once more, the skirt of night shall descend once more. Then the writhing struggles of man and beast trapped within will be naught but a midnight waltz. 2 of the 3 bright moons that caused the perfumed sea of the primordial universe to shine and stirred up the beast of the Arianadrad realm were shred by a sword that tore the horizon asunder, left in smithereens too small even for the mystical sight of the Prinzessin. Or perhaps this was what happened. The bright moons that once illuminated the universe brought dreams and songs to the sweet sleepers of three worlds, and awakened a deep longing in the beast herds that wandered betwixt dawn and dusk. They were at last rendered to dust. But even so, they too wished to remain within the eternal, shining gaze of the Prinzessin, bringing their subtle light unto more lands still." That's what we get from Mitternachtswaltz. And if you know Genshin Impact lore, your mind is abuzz right now, because sweet glory, mine was abuzz! Also, side note, I didn't know that this weapon existed until, I think late last year, early this year. I don't know how I missed it. Oh, I know, because nobody pulls the weapon banners. I missed out on so much. I could have had Fischl with her aesthetically pleasing bow this whole time. I think it would be generally worse for her, though. It's kind of bad. So yeah, that is the end of where we can pull lore from for Fischl. Also, if you're wondering about Drochtvolt, I'm pretty sure Drochtvolt was someone who fell for a young man's dream. Like, he fell in pursuit of that young man's dream. We'll explain later. But yeah, that is all we can learn about the story for Flowers for Princess Fischl. And the overall thing is Fischl will traverse the universe, she will witness many stories, and those stories will give her an idea of how to shape the universe going forward. She will then have to battle Gazamuntskunstwerk, and after it is defeated, she will take her place as the ruler of the Nod-Krai, and she will gather souls, wipe them clean of sin, erase sin from the universe, set her own heart ablaze, and the universe will be reborn in a better state. Yay! Now, what does this mean for who is Fischl? What this means is I have some theories. Whoa. Hold up. You didn't think I was going to tell you my theories right away. No. I told you that there was going to be a part where I talked about specific words. I forgot the word for it. Vocabulary? Descriptions? Oh well. I noticed some weird words while reading through all of this, right? These are words that I don't know the definition of. So I looked them up because I am nothing if not inconsistently thorough. So let's go through them. The first one I looked up was Erynadrad, which was described as a realm. And so this is a Welsh goddess of the sky and stars, ? So when talking about the Erynadrad realm, it'd be the realm of the sky. Interesting. That was the part that was talking about the moons too, so... And yes, that relates directly to Tevat's 3 moons and how 2 of them died. Yeah, Mitternach told us that before we even knew it. This is one of the times where looking back, you're like, how did we not know beforehand? Which means that because we know about it from something from Fischl, that means that Flowers for Princess Fischl isn't fully fictional, and we're getting there. Next is the Tesseract. Now, if you're a D&D nerd, you said, hey, aren't you saying the Tarrasque wrong? To which I say, no, this is a misspelling of the Tarrasque. Hence why I put a picture of the mythological creature, the Tarrasque, which the D&D monster was then based on loosely and took its name from. So yeah, that's Tesseract got its name from the Tarrasque. Also, while telling my mumsy about that, she was like, Tesseract, I know that, what is that? And I was like, well, it's not the Tarrasque. And she's like, no, I don't know what that is. And I was like, are you thinking of a Tesseract? The cube inside of a cube? And she was like, yes! How do you know that? Well, there's one last interesting thing about Tesseract. So there are 2 times that you can give a name to somebody in Genshin Impact. Well, technically 3. You can name your traveler, your player character. You can name the Wanderer, who is Scaramouche from version 1.1, after he erases himself from the universe and then comes back because time loops, shenanigans, things. You get to give him a name. And you're limited on the name a little bit. You cannot give him any of his old names. You cannot give him the name of one of the gods. I believe you cannot name him after any of the dragons. And you cannot name him after any of the Fatui Harbingers who he was co-workers with. Also, if you try to name him after another playable character, the game will say, hey, that's kind of not a good idea. Are you sure you want to do that? Things could get confusing. To which we say, yes, it's funny. So yeah, those are the limitations on the Wanderer. And then the third time you can name something is your little Saurian companion that you get in Natlan. And it has very similar restraints as Wanderer. Except when you try to name it one of the dragon names, Paimon will say a little something, whereas that goes along the lines of, hey, those are some big shoes to fill. Maybe we don't put all that pressure on the little guy. And want to know what name was added to that list? Tasrak. You cannot name your little Saurian Tasrak because it is the name of a dragon and gives it too big of shoes to fill. That means that in the future, we're going to have a boss fight against Tasrak. So cool. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And if you're saying, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not evidence. No, they have done names before that we haven't heard yet. They've blocked off those names in the past too. Or if a playable character for the future and has already been put, like their name has been put into the game's like source code or whatever, it will give up the same message of, hey, this could be confusing, even if that character's not in the game yet. So Tasrak's name was in the game and marked as specifically the name of a dragon, therefore giving us the dragon dialogue for our little Saurian. And if you're saying, well, it could just be referencing to the dragon that's in Flowers for Princess Fischl that you saw in the limited time event, Summertime Odyssey, why was the Wanderer not given that same restriction? Because Tasrak wasn't a name there yet. You see the conspiracy happening, right? Right? You can see where I'm going with this, right? I really hope so. Otherwise, this is just me. Guzamansunverk, this guy, the beast of the world. So I was convinced that I would type this in and either get nothing, or more accurately, a misspelling of a mythological creature. No, I'm wrong. You want to know what this is? This is a German aesthetic. This is an artistic aesthetic. I don't know why, but when I looked that up and found out that this is the name of an aesthetic, I lost it. I lost my mind. I had to sit in a corner for like a minute or so because I just could not cope. Why is the big bad of the story of Flowers for Princess Fischl an artistic aesthetic? I was at a loss for words. I still kind of am. However, I've put it together in a way that's interesting. Next we have Zarathustra, who again, I thought I was going to get a mythological creature. No! Zarathustra was a real guy. It's not him. This is a philosopher, because in the story of Flowers for Princess Fischl, Zarathustra is described as a philosopher, and so I asked my friends who knew anything about philosophy to send me the most, quote, sad boy energy philosopher you know of, to which one of them sent this. And then this was sitting out and about in my house, and my brother was like, hey, what's up with the printout that has a philosopher, a bow, and a raven? Oh, and Twilight. To which I had to explain this. To which he goes, I know of a better one. Sends me a better picture, but it's too late. I already have this one printed out. Anyway, here's his more sad boy energy philosopher. Back to Zarathustra, the name. Real world person. He was a real life person who was an Iranian religious reformer and the founder of Zoroastrianism. I wasn't expecting that either. I wasn't expecting real life religion and religious reform to come into the picture. Alright, next, Damarung. Can you guess? Can you guess what this means? It means Twilight in German. So I picked the worst book cover of Twilight, the one where, for whatever reason, they decided to crop it, and they made it Twilight. It's so stupid looking. And you know what? I wouldn't have noticed if my friends hadn't pointed it out to me. And I was like, when picking my representatives of some of these things, I was like, I have to do the terrible book cover of Twilight. That has to be what Damarung is. Summer Notch Garden, that being Summer Night Garden, essentially. Imanakreich is the Evernight Kingdom. Droctavolt, as referenced by this peacock. I was again expecting a mythological creature, but no, I am once again hit with a real-life person. So, Joktevolt might be a misspelling or a letter swap around, much like Tasrak, for Droktolf, who was the defender of Ravenna. Real-life guy, apparently. The first chapter of Flowers for Princess Fischl, End Time zur Setzung, translates to End Time Decomposition. Edelstein der Dunkelheit, as I said, translates to Gem of Darkness, and that's what Amy calls her vision, and is for Fischl a family heirloom. Prinzessin der Verurteilung translates to Princess of Condemnation. And then Fischl's full title, that being Amy's full title for Fischl, Fischl von Luftschloss Narfendorf, which apparently translates to Fischl of the Sky Castle Narfendorf, which I think Narfendorf is just Amy's last name. Not sure, though. And there's one more, but we're going to hold on to that one, because I did not clock to look this one up. I found it at the end of the Wikipedia for Fischl, the playable character for Amy, where it was talking about, like, etymology of different things in her story. Like, that's not where all of these came from. That's where I got the Edelstein der Dunkelheit through the Fischl von Luftschloss Narfendorf. That's why I looked up those, because I got lazy at the end. Because, again, inconsistently thorough. So some of you might have caught on to what I am suggesting, but that would be very impressive, because I don't fully know what I'm suggesting. Okay? Because I have, like, 2 different avenues I can go down. So let me talk to you about who I think Fischl is. My answer for the question of who is Fischl is you, the player character, the traveler, either Lumine or Aether, depending on which of these 2 twins you picked. They're just going to be up there now. So my theory is that Flowers for Princess Fischl was written by Mr. Nine, who is not a normal author, but is in fact someone with foresight. He can see into the future. Hence why, when he was writing Legend of the Shattered Halberd, he was dissatisfied with how it was going, yet couldn't change anything. He was just writing down the events that happened with slightly altered names. And then when he got to Flowers for Princess Fischl, he got to see a better story. A story that wasn't so bleak, that did have a happy ending, even if the universe did have to restart. And what he saw and wrote down as Flowers for Princess Fischl was the story of you, the traveler, as you travel through the land of Teyvat. And my main evidence for this is the Mitternacht Waltz description. Because let me go over that again, and then let me paint you a picture of which region each line is talking about. Every young man's rage at injustice must turn to calm. That is Mondstadt. Mondstadt is the city of freedom and revolution. When you get there, it's being attacked by Storm Terror, who is actually Dvalin, who's usually a protector of Mondstadt. But due to a misunderstanding and poisoning from the Abyss, he's gone on a rampage against Mondstadt, and your goal is to inevitably calm him down and remove that venom from his bloodstream. And you do, and then he's happily forever after that. Every passion must be ground into dust by the march of time before being turned to wild paranoia upon that inverted ancient tree. That is Liyue. That is the talk of the concept of erosion, something that the Geo-Archon, Rex Lapis, is actively trying to avoid. And he knows that it's coming for him eventually because time grinds you down and it makes you experience this erosion where you lose yourself and you turn to just baser instincts and this wild paranoia. That is Liyue's story, where Rex Lapis fakes his own death to make sure that the people can handle taking care of Liyue after he's gone. Even the branch of the tree of time upon which the great and glorious Riemann Republic nested would be cut off in the end, such that the nation founded by the other twin child of the wolves might rule. This one's tricky. Because that idea of the tree and having a branch cut off, that gives Sumeru vibes. That could be talking about how Rukkhadevata, the original Dendro Archon, took a branch of a tree Irminsul, that being the tree of knowledge in Tevat, took a branch of it, created Lesser Lord Kusanali, or as we know her, Nahida, who would become the new Dendro Archon, and then once Nahida got to her full power-ish, she would erase Rukkhadevata from history, with the idea being that they're both from the same tree, and you have to cut one off so that way the other can grow into a more prosperous future. So it could be Sumeru. Or it could be talking about Inazuma, where you have a more specific reference to this tree of time, that being, I forgot the tree's name, but the Sakura tree, that's kind of like shaped like a fox. At the end of everything that happens in Inazuma, you learn that it has always been there throughout all of time, but nobody ever remembers planting it. And that's because it was planted outside of time by the current Electro Archon A's sister Makoto. Her twin sister, mind you. Makoto planted it in a time outside of time, so that way it would always be there, and yet we also got to witness it being planted once A, the current Electro Archon, understood what eternity meant to her sister Makoto, who was the original Archon. So that idea of like the time and the twins matches really well with Inazuma, but it could also be Sumeru, so that one's a little bit harder to tell. This next one, blatant. Everything in this world must pass through the doorway of their destruction unto the future kingdom of the Prinzessin. That's Natlan, where they have their own special afterlife set up, that being the Night Kingdom. What's Fischl's kingdom called? Nod-Krai. That translates to the Evernight Kingdom. So yeah, it's talking about Natlan and how the souls work there. And you do go into the Night Kingdom during Natlan's quest. And then in the silence of her pitch dark notched garden would they find a place to slumber. That could be Sumeru or Inazuma again. Those two, Sumeru and Inazuma, for this are interchangeable, where the pitch dark notched garden could be referring to the realm of sleep, which is kind of like your own domain of... Scratch that. Yeah, no. Where this pitch black notched garden could be the realm of sleep, in which Nahida has the power over to talk to her people when they're in a state of unconsciousness. However, no one in Sumeru, except for children, dreams. However, this pitch dark notched garden could also reference the plane of euthymia, where A has split her own soul into to meditate for eternity, so that way she does not suffer the effects of erosion. It could be either of those. And saying it out loud, I think I'm leaning towards the Tree of Time being Sumeru, and the pitch dark notched garden being Inazuma. However, I have just constantly gone back and forth between those two. This last one, so solidly Fontaine. Who among those born into this world are not burdened with sin? When the clock sounds for the time of judgment once more, the skirt of night shall descend once more. Then the writhing struggles of man and beast trapped within will be naught but a midnight waltz. That's Fontaine. That's talking about their justice. That's talking about how everyone was labeled a sinner until you, the traveler, along with Neuvalette, were able to get them washed clean of that original sin. And yeah, so that's Fontaine. And then the last section, the part talking about the moons, that gives Nod-Krai, the region that we're going to next. Because there they worship the moon goddesses, and it is strictly talking about the triple moon goddesses there, and why/how they fell, and whether or not you can still see them. So I think when going to Nod-Krai, we're going to have like a little bit of like, what happened with the moons, exactly. And so in all of this, you, the traveler, are going through, you're witnessing every single one of these events. Just like Fischl is going through, she's watching these many stories. And then she'll get to the end where she'll have to face Guzamatskunstwerk. And once that's done, she'll be able to take her kingdom of Nod-Krai, and she'll be able to fix the world, essentially. Going forward with that, it could be the traveler finished witnessing these events, and much like Fischl, we have to go up against an unfathomable concept of a thing, where Guzamatskunstwerk is this aesthetic concept made manifest. The heavenly principles, the primordial being, is what we're going to have to fight in the end. That's our final boss. That's us, the traveler, our Guzamatskunstwerk. And in the end, once we do win, we're the last being left who's a descender, who has will over the world, whose will is greater than the world, and we can shape it to be a better world. We can shape Teyvat to be a better place. And we don't know what will happen after that. Maybe that forces us to be stuck in Teyvat forever, therefore giving up our traveler lifestyle. We're not sure. Just like we're kind of not sure what will happen to Fischl at the end of the story. Will setting her heart ablaze kill her as well? We're not sure. Also, the idea is that Guzamatskunstwerk is also, because Fischl has to kill it before getting to her kingdom, it is the God King that's the last of the Divine Halperts, that being the Princess Endeavor Erzelong, that being Fischl, will have to kill before creating a new universe. Now for my second theory. And this one is, weirdly enough, more unhinged. My theory is that Fischl is an allegory for the last of the Archons that we have not met yet, the Cryo-Archon, the one whose name we don't even have a name for. We only know her title, the Tsaritsa. You can see it as the Tsaritsa has been watching all of the events with the Traveler take place, and we don't know if Fischl intervened in the events that she watched, or if she just kind of watched them and took on forces that were behind those things, kind of a thing. Much like the Tsaritsa has been in the background while her Fatui agents are causing trouble, but have also been helping with certain problems. El Capitano, he is the goat. At the end, you notice that nothing in Mitternachtswaltz lines up with anything we know about Snezhnaya and the Cryo-Archon specifically. That's because it is Fischl. We don't know what happens next, because that's Fischl's story. It isn't one of the stories that she witnessed. It is her story. We don't get to know about what comes next, because that's the Tsaritsa's story to tell. Maybe we team up with the Tsaritsa in the end to defeat our Guzamatskunstwerk. We team up with her to defeat the primordial one. I don't know. What I do know is that there's one last weird thing about Fischl. Something that I learned at the end of my research while I was looking everything up, that I learned at the bottom of the Wikipedia page for Fischl/Amy, in the etymology section, that made me lose my mind. Are you ready? Because I don't think you're ready, because I don't think anyone else has thought about this. The name Amy, where does that come from? The Ars Goetia. Amy is the name of a demon from the Ars Goetia. If you don't know, a lot of the gods in Teyvat have two names. The first being like what they're normally called by the people who worship them. And then the second one is what I like to call their godly name, or what the people in the fandom call their Ars Goetia name. Such as Barbados, that being the Animal Archon, or Morax, the alternate name for Rex Lapis. Or, I don't know, A is Beelzebul, Lesser Lord Kusanali is Bewer, Farina is Fossilors, the Pyro Archon in any of their states is Harburum, even some of the gods who did not become archons, such as Gruzong is Hegentius, Woba is Martrosius. Those all are demon names from the Ars Goetia. And you can also see that with the heavenly principles, the divine principles, that being Renova, Istaroth, Niberius, and Asmodee. Those all also come from the Ars Goetia. Do you know what that means? For whatever reason, Amy follows the same logic as the gods of Tevat, where she has a name that she goes by, and then a hidden name that comes from the Ars Goetia. Because here's the thing about the name Amy. We didn't get it in the game until the Summertime Odyssey event. Where we did get it first is in a birthday message on Genshin Impact's Twitter, where they let it slip, her name is Amy. Every other time in her stories that Amy is referred to as Amy, it's blacked out. Much like a blacked out portion in one of the Ascension materials for the Pyro characters that references the Pyro Archon specifically. Much like we don't know the Saritsa's name. So, well, yeah, maybe I'm wrong and Fischl is not the Saritsa herself, but I think that the Ars Goetia name, the godly name of the Saritsa, is Amy. Thank you and good night. I'm gonna go die. I'm gonna go lie in a corner and think. Yep. Also, if Fischl is the Traveler, that makes Oz Paimon. Or Paimon, more accurately, is Oz. So consider that